Hi, I'm Allison. I'm from Handelsblatt Global, and I'm here with Hannah Thorburn, who's an expert on Russia from the Hudson think tank. Hannah, there's so many things to ask, but let me start. Are we in a new kind of Cold War?
You know, I actually really dislike when people say that this is a new Cold War. I think that the situation that we have now and the situation that we had before 1989 are two very, very different situations. And I think what we have now is a very different kind of world. We're in a kind of multipolar world, and yes, maybe the United States is the largest of those poles, but I don't see as though we're in a situation like we were during the Cold War, where we're struggling again between capitalism and communism. And to me, it's not a new Cold War, and it's actually a little bit dangerous, I think, to call it a new Cold War, because we have in our minds this kind of terrible, scary situation of impending nuclear doom, of war right around the corner. And perhaps that's some of what you're seeing on Russian television today, but I just don't think it jives very much with reality. But the thing that really began to send the U.S.-Russian relationship down the path that it is now was, of course, the Russian invasion of Crimea, Russian military actions in eastern parts of Ukraine, and that was really when you saw the United States sort of put its foot down and say, we're not going to deal with this, we're going to put sanctions on you, that I think Vladimir Putin and the Russians have interpreted as being extremely anti-Russian.
How about the kind of more recent interference with the emails and other revelations that there's some kind of cyber hostility?
I'm not certain that he wants to throw the election. I'm not certain that he wants to, hack the servers and, name a state and make sure that the election's tossed. But I do think that there's an interest there in undermining the confidence of the American voter in our political system, in our democratic system. And I think that that's actually been quite effective.
There's the sort of bromance, some people have called it, between Putin and Trump. How you think that would play out in a kind of foreign policy area after the elections if Trump were to win?
I think there's a concern, even amongst some Russians that I've talked to, that perhaps Donald Trump is a little bit too erratic. He's a little bit too difficult to read. And in a way, though Russia's been very vocal that they don't really like the idea of having Hillary Clinton in the White House, the relationship between Hillary Clinton and Vladimir Putin is notoriously bad. At the same time, they at least know what they're getting with her. And with Donald Trump, that uncertainty that's there is a little bit scary. It's a little bit worrisome. There is certainly a situation under which you could see Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin becoming fast friends and best buddies very quickly. But you can also see a situation in which, in a kind of Erdogan meets Putin situation, where you have two men with two similar personalities, and maybe they look friendly at first, maybe they meet up and they talk and they shake hands and smile broadly, but both of them are not men who want to back down. And so you could end up very quickly with a very bad relationship.
So let's think a little bit about how that could be with Hillary. Some people have called her kind of a closet hawk. Do you think she's kind of waiting to dive in and sort things out?
It's very interesting, because I think if you look at some of the things that came out of her State Department, and then there was a very interesting Washington Post article this morning that talked about how when she left the State Department, she had sent a memo to the president essentially saying, don't do anything with this guy, don't cooperate with Vladimir Putin, don't pretend, that we can actually get something done with him, ignore him. And that was her advice to the president. Now, whether or not she would choose that particular path if and when she becomes president is, of course, another question. But I think her history so far and interactions with Russia show that she would probably be, I think, a little bit tougher than President Obama has been in his dealings and negotiations with Russia. And I think that includes on the question of Syria as well. Hillary Clinton had for some time talked about wanting a no-fly zone over Syria. Of course, that seems as though that's not going to be a possibility anymore. There's essentially a de facto Russian no-fly zone over Syria. But you can see where she's started to separate herself in the foreign policy arena from President Obama. And I do think she's going to be a little bit tougher on Russia. And I also think that simply because of the way she's been treated by the Russians, she's in no mood to be kind. And that's, I think she looks at it perhaps as a bit of a litmus test, were she to be elected president, that this is the big challenge to face.